This Boss Rush Spotlight is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support the Boss Rush family of podcasts, head to bossrush.net or our Patreon at patreon.com/bossrushmedia. Thanks for helping us build something better.
Welcome! My name is Stephanie, and I will be one of your hosts here for the Boss Rush Presents Spotlight, or Developer Spotlight. I am joined by my better half, PK Power, Pat. Say hi.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Steph?
I'm glad it's the weekend. I finally have time to play some games, hopefully beyond Legend of Zelda. Not that there's anything wrong with it, clearly, but I need to start branching back out. But
we definitely have some guests who can tell you about a game that's, would be considered branching out from a Zelda path.
Exactly. So we are blessed to have Tony and Abby from Black Tabby Games. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you for taking your time out of your day, especially we're recording on a Friday night, and that you guys could probably tell I don't have a life when I schedule things on a Friday night. But hey, if it's
you're in good company, so we were just going to work all night,
7
probably.
days a week.
Oof.
And sometimes take time off.
Talking about video games is always fun, so I don't mind it. So just kind of getting into it, you guys have founded Black Tabby Games, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to know, it might seem self-explanatory, but tell me the history of why you chose that name.
Well, Tony and Abby is where we got Tabby from. And we make horror games.
Cats.
We like cats, so that works.
Black cats have that horror aesthetic.
Indeed, so we went with Black Tabby Games.
That's perfect, because what you'll learn is Pat and I are one of the biggest cat people ever.
Yeah,
Pat, where's Zelda?
Zelda's behind the computer right now chewing cords.
She's chewing cords again? Where's your spray bottle? All right.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but I'm wearing my Stray tank top. Stray is one of my favorite games, and my cat's somewhere. Usually she comes in and visits, so...
Once you get talking, she feels like she has to be a part of things.
Yes, exactly. So maybe the fact that I'm expressing that I want her to come here, she's now like, no, I'm going to come when you least expect it. So just to give the audience a quick background, I know you guys just heard me go through this spiel, but Pat and I attended PAX East 2023, one of my favorite memorable experiences in gaming thus far, because we went as media representing Boss Rush and the Boss Rush website. And Pat and I hit the booths hard. I think you had some blisters to prove that.
Oh yeah, the feet, I think, scarred, but you know what?
Oh,
we'll call them battle wounds, and
they were worth it.
Yep. Trophies.
Yes, and we saw Black Tabby Games there showing off their up-and-coming game, which we will definitely dive into, Slay the Princess. And what had caught my eye personally was the hand-drawn artwork. So, Abby, the reason why I'm particularly excited for it is because my first love was graphic novels. Like, for me, myself, I drew... when I say graphic novels, I'm not some famous published person. I've published books because writing is easier. I'm using air quotes. It's still challenging. I don't want to brush either side off. And here's another thing. I don't know about you guys growing up where you were, but when I was a teenager, preteen, comic books and graphic novels were dorky and nerdy, and I got bullied for it. I still drew it and I still liked it, but I'm just saying, oh man, it probably doesn't make sense to publish them because no one's going to read them because they're dorky and silly. And now everything nerd culture is awesome. right? Look what happened to
Oh, yeah.
Marvel. I don't even need to get into that conversation.
Yep.
I
So
feel like that's because we were the nerds growing up, and we were young, and the non-nerds were kind of the dominant species out in the world. And now that we're the dominant species, like, we can just blast nerd culture however we want it.
yeah, it's like we
Mhm.
got our say now. So
Mm-hmm.
no lie, back there somewhere, I have wads of my drawings on that like A6 or A5 like manga paper with the different kind of pens that have the different sizes and the alcohol based markers. So from there, I just have a huge love for anything hand drawn. I know
That's wonderful.
digital art is fantastic. I'm not blasting it by any means, but I don't know. So that's what got me really fired up when I saw Slay the Princess. So Abby, um, I kind of blindsided you and asked for a picture.
Aw, that's so sweet. Yeah, I come from comics. I have 7 graphic novels under my belt, and I also, of course, drew comics growing up. So
What?
very
I
much
must
been looking
find.
forward. Yes, I recommend The Crossroads at Midnight. That's my most recent book before we started work on Scarlet Hollow. It's the
Okay.
project I finished up right before launching into episode 1 of Scarlet Hollow, which is our other game. So I have been an artist for a long time. And there is just something about drawing on paper. It has a different quality to it. Like digital art, you can do a lot of stuff with it.
Mhm.
And I do scan it in and I process it digitally, and I do a lot of digital coloring for Scarlet Hollow and other work like that. But black and white, hand drawn, is like my house. That is where I live.
Oh, yes, chef's kiss.
Awesome.
This
So,
is drawn
question
with
about
real
that.
pencils.
So you said you started off in comics. Was that kind of your stepping stone into the video game world? Like, who was it among you two that decided, I want to make a video game?
It was kind of
It's
mutual.
kind of a mutual thing. We both needed a new project to work on, and happened to be talking about a hypothetical video game.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was just easy to go from point A to point B.
Yeah, it was over the course of like a few days. Like we had been talking with a friend of ours about fun visual novel things to do, and then turned to each other. We're like, well, we could just do that, couldn't we? We have the resources to just do that. And here we are.
Yeah, games have a great thing where they're digital, so you don't have to worry about getting a bunch of copies printed and then distributing them and getting them shipped all over. And that wound up being doubly fortuitous because we started work on games like a month before the pandemic happened, which
I don't know if people outside of publishing are aware of what happened during the pandemic
was
to
so bad.
shipping books to the price of paper. Like, oh my God. It went from, so my book, The Crossroads at Midnight, was printed during the pandemic, and it's printed in a printer in China. And shipping costs went from $2,000 for a pallet to $30,000 for a pallet.
Jeez.
So if at any point during the pandemic you were wondering why it was so hard to get a hold of new books or books at all, that's why.
Yeah, people just stopped shipping things because
kind of
they needed to wait for the price to go down.
Oh,
but with a game, you can just hit a publish button, and then it's on Steam. And
then if there's a typo, you can fix it. You can upload the version with no typos in it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I totally understand that, because I was talking with my publisher. He's a small indie publisher for my latest novel that was published around the pandemic, and not just that, but he had to adjust all the prices. Just getting distribution was a nightmare, and I don't mean this like, well, hopefully you'll get what I mean. Like I'm shocked he's still in business, and again, I mean that not in an insulting way, but just like most businesses, especially in the publishing industry, were hit very hard.
Absolutely, I'm surprised a lot of people survived, but thank goodness.
I feel like most people somehow did. Most publishers survived. I can think of like maybe one or two that closed in the past few years, but most of them are still kicking.
Indie publishers I work with. Congrats to publishers. That was
they just waited it out, right? And they had copies from previous things that were already coming in.
Yeah, very. They persevered, or just were really, really stubborn, because we're good like that.
Yeah, of course.
So, do either of you either or both of you also game at all, or is kind of video games kind of like a new frontier for you guys?
I am a lifelong video gamer.
Mhm.
You played RuneScape and Neopets growing up.
Yeah, I played
Those are
RuneScape and
games.
Neopets. Those
Neopets,
were my
yes.
Yeah, it was mostly computer stuff. Video games were kind of not a thing in my house because my mom was like, "You should learn to do other things with your life," and that has benefited me. But now I don't know how to hold a controller. I'm learning.
And the thousands of hours I've put into video games has benefited me. Because I'm their job now.
What kind of stuff do you guys like to play?
I like exclusively narrative horror games. Though I guess Dredge is a narrative horror game, right? I love Dredge. That was great. I finished that recently.
Yeah. I will say I feel like I've definitely played a lot less games now that we're working in them, just because playing games now feels like work, and there's just a thing that starts to go on in the back of your head where you pick something up and then you think about, how is this designed? How did they do this? How would I approach this if I were the game designer? So it becomes pretty labor intensive.
That was me with comics, and now me with games. Slowly, I'm chipping away at all of my hobbies. Eventually, I'll only have work.
Right.
I'm sorry. That's got to be one of the worst feelings when, like, what you enjoy and love all of a sudden just starts, becoming work.
Yes and no, because like part of the way it becomes work is you get to view things through an entirely different lens, so it transforms the experience. I feel this a lot with not even just games, but listening to narrative podcasts or watching movies or consuming any sort of media, where once you have been in the weeds enough, you get to look at it from a completely different perspective, and I enjoy that perspective more than I think even if I put more time into it in the before days, I enjoy the new perspective more, if that makes sense.
If you want to be a Patreon producer, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/BossRushMedia, and find out which tier is right for you. Our Patreon producers at the $5 tier or higher for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, and Rebecca Jewell. Thank you for your continued support.
Well, I was actually just playing a video game this week called Decarnation, and to me, it honestly, the game had some really disturbing content in it, and I was thinking to myself, it's because it's a video game that this just like hits me so much harder. Like it's a game about a woman who gets kidnapped and held against her will in like some guy's basement. You're going through her mind and what is she thinking right now? And like just seeing her lose her sanity to a point where she goes into like Stockholm syndrome. And it's like the video games almost made it a perfect medium to like tell this story because you're experiencing it with her.
Yeah.
And, that's just like amazing that you can do that with this.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing that separates or elevates the really, really good video game writers, where they pick stories that benefit from that interactivity and benefit from being in the medium so much. So it's like for our work, we're both writers. We really zeroed in on stories where player choice and agency and the perspective that comes from having to make decisions within a narrative are important to the thematic core of the story, and that those narratives wouldn't work outside of the context. And I think it makes for more effective games. Do you have thoughts on this, Abby? I'm talking a lot.
I agree with your thoughts.
Wow, thank you.
It's a very different experience. And I think retelling similar stories in different kind of context, like adapting video games is very hard because so much of it is the interactivity. Like even just the story itself hinges so much on you actually experiencing it as the character.
Yeah. Even for linear things.
Mm-hmm. Even for linear things.
So you're just hearing that reminds me of a very popular, I don't know if it's the right word, Pat, article on our website. It was an editorial that video games are not art. I think it was a response piece to video games are art. I'm trying to figure out which one came first. As you can imagine, that prompted lots of comments and conversations about the idea of video games as an artistic medium. I'm obviously on camp video games are art, but just having this discussion with you guys show that it's just it is not just, it is another medium of where one can consume content, but in this case you have that added layer of interaction.
Yeah, I think that's really what sets video game. I mean, of course, it's what sets video games apart. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's also just the component. This is an old debate stoked by Roger Ebert back in the day, and I think so much of it just comes down to as an artistic medium, video games are still in their infancy, right? Like painting has been around for centuries, if not millennia. Video games have been around for, if you're being generous, 50 years, and there wasn't even a capacity to tell anything beyond the simplest story until a couple decades into that. So I think it's very much a medium, and it's so much more complicated than so many other forms of art because it's the intersection of so many artistic skills. Just like a movie requires directing and cinematography and costuming and acting and writing and all of these other things. It's like video games are that, and then you have to put on interactivity on top of it, and there's 50 million ways you can make something interactive. So of course it's going to take a long time for the medium to mature, but there's been some really, really incredible stuff that people have been making lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly like it's in its infancy, and yet it is already so good. So, wow, imagine.
Yeah, I think we're lucky to be living through it, right, Pat?
Yep. You know what? This is probably one of the good things about the time that we live in is just our video games are pretty awesome right now.
Yeah, we got good video games.
Yeah.
One good thing.
Well, speaking of video games, this might be a good time for me to ask about your first game first before we get into the real meat and potatoes. Tell us a little bit about Scarlet Hollow, because I've looked it up on Steam and tried to do my research, but it's way more fun have you guys talk about it than me just prattle on.
Scarlet Hollow is an episodic visual novel with a very interactive narrative. Extreme branching in that one is kind of our focus. So the story is basically you are contacted by a long-lost cousin who says, your aunt has died and you should come to the funeral in this small town in North Carolina. So you show up and things start going wrong almost immediately. We're currently on episode 5. Like, we're working on episode 5. Episode 4 was released earlier this year, and there are planned 7. So it's going very well. People really love it. And I'm very, very happy with it.
Yeah.
Cool. So, like, what brought in the inspiration of Scarlet Hollow? Like, what made you think, like, was this the first idea that you came up with, or were there other ideas before Scarlet Hollow happened?
It's a transformation of the first idea. The first idea was an anthology game where it was a series of dating sim scenarios that took place in a small town, but all of them would quickly veer into the horrific. So you might go on a date and your date might start melting in front of you.
Or it was only that for
a day.
Yeah. But I do still like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
But the bones of that are still in it. So a lot of them are kind of these disparate stories that all take place in one town that are all connected in a very complicated web. and your choices in each episode carry over quite a bit. So,
yeah, we take the whole "your choices matter" thing extremely seriously.
yeah, like we're focusing on art and writing first and foremost. We're not doing like mini games to try to spice things up. We're just focusing on making sure that you feel like this is your unique world, and that is what we have been hearing from people. So I think it's working.
Right. Yeah, no,
Love
we
that.
haven't gotten comments about choices not mattering or people expressing doubt about our ability to make choices matter in a long time. The script for the first the first 4 episodes is 600,000 words long currently. You maybe see like 150,000 of those on a single playthrough, and a lot of it are just these small changes that reference and incorporate previous decisions you make. We also do a very fun thing where we developed a relationship system with characters in the game where instead of doing a typical, this person likes you or they don't like you, and if you give them a rock, you'll get,
you get
two
plus heart.
2 like points, and if you give them a flower, you'll get 2 disapproval points. So we have
not like there's anything wrong with
no,
that system,
but
but we decided if
to
we're focusing
build
on
on it.
story and we're
Yeah.
focusing on making them feel like real people.
so we do something that has it's 12 separate variables that we track, and then a lot of character dynamics and dialogue and what sprites are being shown are often a factor of multiple variables. So like some of the more common ones, we have like an axis that we call like agreeability versus adversarialness, which is something that might take the place of a typical "you were nice so they like you" type situation, but it really just is a surface level measure of how nice you are. And
Characters then can choose, because we write them, so we can write them as people, to react to that in very different ways. So
Right.
just like being nice to somebody because you feel like you should be nice to everybody will actually get you bad points, I guess, with some characters.
right, so it's like
Because they think that you're being a kiss ass.
right, so there's like another axis that looks at the emotional depth of your relationship. So if you're doing a bunch of agreeable things, but the rest of the relationship is emotionally closed off, that's when a character might be like, "Oh, you're just fluffing me up. You're just kind of being polite, but you don't actually care about me."
Like disingenuous.
We have a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
we have a lot of ways. Like we also have a trait system where at the beginning you can pick 2 different characteristics that then kind of define your character and gives you a lot of extra dialogue and some very important choices. So that kind of means, paired with the relationship system, that it's got a lot more RPG elements to it and a lot of replayability. So
I was
that's
going to say,
kind of
Pat, it's almost kind of like RPG territory when when
Dude, we're getting into like real life territory here.
That's the goal. It should feel real, and that makes it so much worse when bad things happen.
I'm glad you mentioned kind of the stats on how much the word count, right? How significant that is, because I'm not sure people understand how much writing is involved when you have several endings. And you said it was over 600,000. You said.
Yeah, so it's currently a little longer than the entirety of the Lord of the Rings.
I mean, was that like? Did you guys ever feel at any point during the writing overwhelmed? Because it's not easy to write several different scenarios and weave them so they either don't contradict one another. Like, did you run into any of these challenges? Did they get easier as you provided each episode, or
How do you just keep track of all that?
yeah?
we just
our
remember
brains are steel traps for information.
And there's 2 of us in
Right.
the same house all the time, so combined we have a mega brain. So
2
that's how it
steel
works.
trap mega brain. Got it.
And, Scarlet Hollow is also in early access, so on the rare occasions where we scuff something up, we can just change it.
Yeah.
there's
Unfortunately, we have a very dedicated fan base.
Oh yeah, we get to learn all
Give them
sorts
the
of
madness.
things, like what year Post-it notes were invented. So
So I have
maybe
to
these
fix that,
Post-it
right.
notes that you drew in this book are anachronistic, and they should be something else.
I still need to change that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you learn all kinds of things that you don't think to look up first.
But yeah, and I feel like we both are very detail oriented in our approach to media. I know that so a lot of like fringe experiences that I brought into like my contributions for games writing were a combination of running tabletop games, where you have to keep a lot of things straight, and then also just like getting very into discussing other complicated narrative games. Anything in the middle years for BioWare was something that I was super involved in, so really, really liked reading everyone's long theories on Mass Effect when the third game dropped, and on the Dragon Age games, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of decisions in those games to keep track of, and I guess just being into reading discussions and theories about that was a type of exercise that was good preparation for games writing.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm soaking it all in. Holy moly. So how has your experience been putting your first game on Steam, and did you seem to like, how did you go about developing that fan base? Did they just kind of happen to flock to you? What was it like dealing with feedback? I'm curious as to how that experience was.
So, from my comics career, I definitely brought over a lot of people who were already fans of my work and who are also fans of video games. So that was a pretty decent start.
Yeah, like across all of the crowd funds you did before Scarlet Hollow, I think there were like 6,000 total backers. So that was a pretty significant collection to bring in.
Mhm.
You had still have a pretty good Twitter following, so that helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely an uphill battle learning how to market things on Steam, and I think it's worth mentioning how much smoother the process has been for Slay the Princess, our second game, than it was for Scarlet Hollow.
We have learned a lot.
We had to learn so many things, like timelines for putting pages up, what works well on a Steam page, what kind of things do people engage with, do you do demos, do you do early access, what's the value of a wish list, how do you convert into things.
It's a lot of stuff that, you get a lot of different information from different people, because it's never just going to be one-to-one for everybody, like perfect all the way down, and there's definitely a checklist and you just do all these things. Like, we're doing something with Scarlet Hollow that most people would just be like, you can't do that. Like, early access, episodic releases of a linear narrative, and it's a visual novel.
And you only pay once, and then every new episode is just a free update for that base price.
But kind of having our feet on the ground and having to make it work in the moment, I think was really good for learning how to market it, and it's still going well, even though it has all of these things that usually don't work.
I think something that's worked really well for Scarlet Hollow is it is a mystery game as much as it is a horror game. Every episode ends on a cliffhanger, and the deeper you go, the more tiny little details that you can find that maybe are relevant to piecing together the larger mystery, and we've been able to kind of take the excitement that people have when they finish a playthrough and funnel that into a Discord community. Our Discord is a little under 6,000 people right now, so it's pretty vibrant. And
yeah, the Scarlet Hollow folks do a lot of chatting.
Yeah.
A lot of notes comparing.
It's at the point where it's just kind of self-sustaining, which is great. But it was very, very hard to get there, and I think it was a combination of everything you brought to the table community-wise to start with. Also, you're amazing, Alex.
Thank you.
And a lot of perseverance and figuring out this is working, this isn't working, we have to push through to this new release, we have to do this patch, we have to do the next thing.
Yeah, you're very obsessive about it. It's
It's
very great to have Tony as like our marketing.
Yeah, I mean, like, and the way Slay the Princess, our second game, came about was very much tied. Whoops, sorry about that. Oh, it's terrible. Oh my god.
Yep.
Oh my god, I am so sorry.
Is everything okay?
Oh, I just dropped
Tony's
a
been
little
fiddling
thing
with
I've been fidgeting
A
with.
glass
Oh no,
ball.
it's okay. I was like, oh my gosh, like you must have like dropped something.
No, it just probably made some bad sound on the microphone. But anyways, Slay the Princess as a concept came about because marketing an early access visual novel, even when it was doing well, was an uphill battle. And I was tired of coming up with new ways to engage people on Twitter and emailing influencers all the time. So that game very much came about as what if like all of the time I was spending on marketing was spent writing a script for a second project, and what if there's a bunch of things we can do with the art and the other components that minimize the time sink so we can continue delivering Scarlet Hollow in a timely manner, but then have another finished project under our belts.
Yeah, and that has paid off.
Oh yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, like Slay the Princess is very much fed into Scarlet Hollow's continued success. So.
Yeah, it's the number one driver of sales for Scarlet Hollow.
Yeah, so if you're ever struggling with your first game, just make a second game.
Uh-huh.
Don't do that. Don't follow that advice.
But
This is survivorship
That's
bias.
the George R. R. Martin way. You don't want to do that.
To pay off.
Nice. I mean, it seems like it's working very well for you, and that's a very excellent segue. What was it like having Slay the Princess showcased at PAX? Was that your first PAX, or
As a game studio?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've worked a booth for comics before, actually, at a handful of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Abby got her comic start on an online reality show hosted by Penny Arcade to find the next great webcomic.
Yeah,
where she placed second.
I was second.
Wow.
Nice.
I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
Did it. So, yeah.
Awesome.
That launched my comics career. So,
all right. Well, then, in this particular case, PAX was especially special for you guys. What was that experience like, being on the floor and having people play your game in front of you and ask you questions?
Absolutely amazing. For one thing, I'm so used to tabling with comics where, you're selling something the whole time. So you're very much glued to the table.
Yeah.
You're constantly doing transactions. And any minute you spend away is a minute that you could be making more money. So it's very stressful. This one was much more chill. I could walk away from the table sometimes.
Right. I feel like...
Not that I wanted to, because there were so many people playing it.
Yeah.
And they were having so much fun.
Something I liked a lot, and I've only been the eye candy at Abby's comic booths. But something I really appreciated about the difference between this PAX and other ones was the fact that it's like people were at this booth because they thought the game was cool and they were there for the game. Whereas, and I mean, this is also a good thing that they were at your booth for you and to interact with you and to buy a book from you. And if they'd already had your other books, to get you to sign them.
But it did feel like the game was speaking for itself.
Yeah.
So that really felt like something.
You guys were in the spotlight area. That's a huge area to be in. Like, other people had little corner booths that, may not have been as visited as the spotlight. So.
Yeah, it was great placement. We had a big speaker. We have really good voice acting in our game. So that was a huge draw for people. And I think just being able to see someone play through and see different paths constantly. Because there are 11 paths in the demo alone. So it was a pretty good variety.
Yeah, the fact that you could hear and engage with someone else's playthrough, or maybe two other people's playthroughs before you got a chance at the booth, instantly makes the most difficult sell of the game, which is, no, there's branching, your choices really matter. Every playthrough feels different. which is like that's something that's so important about games, but it also has been so subsumed into just like marketing language, especially marketing language for things that sometimes overpromise, that you can't really say that anymore without being met with skepticism.
But I think having it play out in front of people
Exactly.
was an entirely
To be able to
thing.
see two entirely different things on two screens while you're waiting means a lot.
Yes. So I was just trying to pull it up so I don't so I can read from Steam. But so Slay the Princess is a choice-driven psychological horror visual novel / dating sim with dramatic branching, light RPG elements, and hand-penciled art. Let's see. Not intended for children or those easily disturbed. Just want to throw that in there. But so goodness, where do we want to start? So I think the number of endings is one thing that caught my attention. How you said there was just about a dozen at the demo alone. How many total endings do you have, or am I allowed to ask?
So that
We want to make sure that Tony's got a lot to say.
I have a
about
lot of things.
I want to make sure
about
that people know that this one is going to come more together in the end. But then, of course, Scarlet Hollow, our other game, has so much more branching. That one is going to have a lot of endings. So it's not that we're saying that our branching doesn't matter because, oh wait, I'm messing up my words.
Don't worry about it.
You go.
So I think a common mistake people make when they talk about branching in games is focusing too much on quantity of endings. I feel like that's a lens that can only ever lead to disappointment. I think every playthrough of Slay the Princess is going to feel radically different than any other playthrough. But it is also hard to quantify what is an ending. Right? Like something I remember a lot when Mass Effect 3 was about to come out is the internal team talked about how, there's like 24 endings, or depending on how you look at it, hundreds of endings. And it's like, in that case, what is an ending? Is an ending like permutations of what can happen for a final choice? Is an ending the accumulation of all of the choices you've made over the course of the game? Because like state of the Mass Effect universe is wildly divergent in almost infinite ways if you look at every combination of things. But when it comes down to it, the game came out and everyone's like, well, there's 3 endings.
Red, blue, or green.
Red, blue, or green. I'm a ride or die for red, personally. Abby picked green. But all of this is to say, I think it's better to place emphasis on the journey. I'm also trying to be very careful about saying anything about ending states about Slay the Princess, lest the fan theorists on our Discord make assumptions and then set themselves up for those assumptions to be undermined in some way. There are multiple endings, and
the game ends at some point.
Pretty much
Confirmed,
no
there's
2
ending.
playthroughs will be the same.
Nice.
Now, I remember you saying in PAX that the princess that is currently in your demo is just one of many princesses you're going to run into in the game. How many princesses are you adding to this?
So essentially, the demo branches from Chapter 1 into 10 separate Chapter 2s. Each of those are their own routes through the story. And those routes will diverge in different ways. Fundamentally, though, there is only one princess.
Yes. And there's a lot to come.
But there are a lot of ways to view her.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And very eloquently said. Like, I appreciate it. But I got ahead of myself. So the basic concept, you as the character are being spoken to by a narrator, and the narrator is essentially saying you need to kill this princess because if you don't, the world's going to end. Some catastrophic events like bad it's going to happen, right? So you're kind of going through this kind of internal, like, do I spare her, or do I kill her? Is the narrator trustworthy, or is the princess trustworthy? Is the princess telling the truth? Is she lying? So talk about just being totally me being me, if I were to play, being totally confused and not knowing what to do. Where did this idea come from for Slay the Princess? It's fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it definitely started from we talked about earlier in terms of what's a game that's more limited in scope than Scarlet Hollow.
It kind of grew from the limitations that we placed on it.
Yeah. So the initial limitations were, what is a good horror concept that has one location and one character on screen, to really, again, minimize things and make it quickly. Can't talk too much about what the initial concept was because spoilers.
Fair.
But it sort of came from that. I think that there's some pretty clear influences that have made their marks in it. Heavy influences from the Stanley Parable.
Yes.
I got the Stanley Parable one immediately with the narrator.
Yeah, heavy influences from that. Heavy influences from Disco Elysium. I enjoyed.
Yeah, I see a poster in the background. Is that from Disco Elysium? Either that or I Need Glasses.
Yeah, it's our Kim Kitsuragi display. We've got a few of them scattered throughout the house. Love the art in that game. But I was enamored with just the entire concept of your skills talking to you in that game. Was not originally going to do something like that, but what was I going to say? The little guys who pop up. For, again, spoiler reasons, it was a natural solution to a difficult challenge posed by the core initial concept of the story, having internal voices that are a representation of you. What was I going to say?
I suppose it also ties into something that isn't that much of a spoiler but I don't think we're allowed to talk about it. Fan theorists are allowed to talk about it.
Everything is a spoiler right now. Abby is our studio's version of Tom Holland. Every time we go on a podcast, she accidentally spoils something.
Oh, no. No worries. This is, very enticing. And now you have me wanting to, play Stanley Parable right now after I'm done with the podcast. To you, Abby, real quick. So only because I've seen Slay the Princess in person. Can you describe kind of maybe just a high level, a day in the life of how you prepare hand-drawn art? I mean, this I guess still applies to Scarlet Hollow as well. But since we're on the topic of your current game, Slay the Princess, your process from drawing, I'm sure various iterations of the same drawing as the dialogue progresses, scanning it, rendering it. I would love to know this process.
Well,
I know it's a big question.
So my day right now consists of wake up, go to the gym, do our morning stuff, come back, do writing for episode 5 of Scarlet Hollow, and then Tony's working on Slay the Princess next to me. And then at a certain point in the day, I just switch over to working on art. And the way that works is we kind of work through a scene and decide what needs to be unique assets, what is going to be need a special background versus what we can put on kind of a blank background.
It's always unique assets.
It's always unique assets. We're just finishing up one of the more complicated art routes. It's thankfully one of the first ones we're doing.
Yeah, but it's 200 unique sprites or something like that.
Yeah, and it's all... Oh, actually, well, no, I can't share any of that. It's spoiler art. But, so my process is basically I have, my backgrounds, and then I have a see-through paper that I put over top of it. And that's where I draw all of the sprites so that I can figure out where they're going to be positionally. And then I can draw other sprite, things I'll switch out so that it could be a sprite that talks or a sprite that moves around. So that's kind of how that goes. With this one, it's all straight to just pencils. Like I don't have to worry about inking it, which I do for Scarlet Hollow. Like I do a lot of really heavy ink work and cross hatching for Scarlet Hollow, and that's actually the big time sink.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a second big time sink, which is I assume this is an audio only interview, so we can't show paper.
It is audio and camera on. So
I work on 18 by 24 paper, so
For
it's
Scarlet
about
Hollow.
poster size, like a big poster.
Yeah.
So that's what I do for all of the backgrounds and like all of the sprites that fill a certain amount of space. They have to be that big.
It's like
There's
the
a ton of
Princess's
variation.
paper is like
It's like half,
like
the,
half
size.
the size.
It's like 11 by 17, so it's a lot faster. in
Oh,
general.
okay.
A lot kind of looser. I don't have time to really worry over it. And also, like, there's a thing with pencils where if you work on it for too long, it'll just smudge to hell and back. So I have to be pretty quick. And I think that helps it feel really energetic. And I like to keep it really, like, fast and loose.
yeah.
Just aesthetically.
There's a dreamlike quality to Slay the Princess that allows the art to be very, very fast. Because, like, in Scarlet Hollow, Abby's the sort of artist who will, on every background, have, like, 15 little Easter eggs where, you know, you might see a poster a character has on a wall, or in the case of some character, like, there's one character who's an artist, and you go into his room, and, like, there's
I think I have
30
to do 30
paintings, both on the wall and on canvases, and it's like she drew all of those and then colored all of those within it. So it needs to be bigger paper.
Yeah, for all that tiny detail. Whereas this one, it's all kind of just a little bit more, like Tony said, dreamy. So it also means that I don't have to worry too much about consistency through different art and different like background, like shots of the same background. The design elements are definitely, I spend a lot more time working on them since this lives more in Tony's head than it does in mine. So I have to check with Tony and be like, is this what you were looking for? Is this on the theme? But then I do bring a lot of my own pizzazz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that makes the game work so well, where it is like a synthesis of two very different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a much less visual person than Abby is. That comes across in my writing, where I'm not very descriptive of the visuals of scenes. I generally talk more in vibes. So, like, I'll mention a cabin, and in the first draft of the script, it's like the only furniture of note is like a table and a knife on the table, and then I give that to Abby, and she just draws the cabin, and there's only a table in it. I was like, oh, I just
That's what you asked
there
for.
would be more. But like that interpretation adds a lot to it.
Yeah, and it's the sort of thing where it's like with a cabin like this, everything does mean something. So, you know, adding in a bunch of just cabin accoutrement does not make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I would have to like know why each element was there. That's how it always is with backgrounds.
I'm also the jock husband to her goth wife vibe. So like I'm clearly into horror, but not in the way she is. I remember the first draft of the first demo for Slay the Princess was a lot less spooky and leaned a lot more into the comedic angles, and then Abby would hand me a drawing and be like, and here she is gnawing her arm off. Look at these hyper realistic teeth.
Isn't that what you wanted?
Yeah. Remember being taken aback in abject horror. And then a second later being like, no, this is correct. This is better.
Yeah, people I loved watching PAX, like watching people play it at PAX and getting to certain moments that we knew might affect them and seeing them visibly react to, say, the sweet, nice princess chewing her arm off. I liked that. It was very fun to see that.
That human component was something that was missing from our work.
It's like we had only been working on games during the pandemic, so we had not interacted with anybody outside of our friend groups.
Yeah.
Like
and people online, but you know,
it's not the same, right?
Yeah, like even watching a streamer, it's not the same because a streamer is putting on a performance on top of playing your game.
I also will say about the art that I like to not take a lot of shortcuts, especially with this one, because the art is so fast. Like I know that I can make a lot of it. The original demo, which is not the one that demoed at PAX. PAX, there was some extra stuff in that one.
We did a director's cut of the demo.
A director's cut, if you will.
4 new princesses and
Yeah.
too much new art.
But the original demo, it took me a week to finish all of the assets. I don't remember how many it was, 250 or something?
Yeah, something like that.
So that was the whole demo. Like, basically all of Chapter 1, including a lot from Chapter 2, was all done in a week. So it's that kind of speed.
Wow.
She's also superhumanly fast.
Thank
I
you.
think she's maybe a Terminator.
Oh, thank you. And I like to just make sure that things feel different, and especially that action flows really smoothly, which is something that is very hard to do if you don't like have an artist on staff who is basically working for just making sure that the game is finished.
Right.
So I bring that a lot from comics, where following the line of action through a page, or even just like from panel to panel, figuring out where everyone is, like where they're moving, and making sure that you're keeping track of like what's going on with their body and what they're holding and that kind of thing. I want to bring that over into this art and make sure that you always feel like the thing that comes after it is like, it flows really well into the next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that is really difficult for a lot of visual novel studios, where if there is not an artist in-house, it becomes
wildly
prohibitively expensive to have more than a few sprites per character, or to do the thing that we do where like the characters so often interact with the background, especially for a lot of other studios. You know, there's artists who specialize in characters, and there's artists who specialize in background work. So it's very helpful that Abby
I do them both.
does them both, and is one of the 2 people at our studio.
Indeed. Thanks, comics. I have you to thank for this.
Yeah. Speaking of kind of the way you work together, I definitely feel a great dynamic. Well, obviously, what's it like kind of, working with someone that you live in the same house with? Do you guys sometimes kind of need to have your own like you time to kind of make things work? Do you have like specific, this is our work time and this is our personal life time, or is everything kind of all mixed together?
It's all mixed together. It helps that we're not actually 2 people. We're one entity that's split in 2 at one point.
Yeah, it's very helpful. No personal space.
That is super sweet.
I mean, we're both very passionate about our work. It's the thing that interests us the most.
Yeah.
Working together has been a huge improvement over what it was like before we worked together, where I was doing like tech startup stuff and Abby was doing her comic stuff, and both of those jobs were cyclical, where there would be a slow period and then there would be super intense deadlines where one of us would not see the other person for day. Like even when we lived together, it would just be like, I see you physically, but you are in another realm.
And like, I mean, for the last, I think 3 months of the Crossroads at Midnight deadline, I was working 16-hour days.
Just awake, work, sleep.
Yeah, it was really rough.
And we
do that together.
Right. Like, we still have to do some crunch. We're unfortunate. I see a cat. Cute.
That's Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Zelda. I'm going to say we're both deadline motivated people. We both come from the philosophy of like the work will expand like a gas or liquid to fill the vessel of the time you give it.
Yeah. Like I will work. I will put more detail into backgrounds. I'll take a little bit longer if I know that I have more time.
We'll think something through. We'll expand a scene. We'll add another path. We'll add more dialogue. Crunching sucks. Our main philosophy though is like, because we own our games and stand to benefit from it, we're okay mutually deciding that we can crunch, but we always make sure we're not creating an environment where anyone who works for us has to crunch under a deadline. So we
always try to make sure that we give the people who work for us plenty of time to do what they need to do or work us into their schedules.
So it's like aside from us.
And we hope that works.
It works. projects.
But nobody's around.
I mean, no one else is doing even full-time work on our games. Aside from us, we have, I think the person we work with the most is our composer, Brandon Boone, who does a phenomenal job.
Yeah, he is also so fast, so dedicated, and incredible at what he does.
And then we have a sound guy, Phil, that we work with. Generally, I'll just send him a spreadsheet at some point. It's like, I need all these sounds, and most of them he'll have in his extensive sound libraries, and then sometimes he'll have to make something horrific because we said very specific things.
Crush a few watermelons, what have you.
And then we've got our voice actors too, but for the voice actors, it's generally like, and here's 3 days of back-to-back recording sessions before a release, and then I do my best to not annoy them with follow-up emails being like, this line was inaudible, or this word is wrong. But that's pretty rare.
Wow.
I feel like the only really big issue with having deadlines at the same time is that we're both just disasters for a little while.
Yeah, we order a lot of DoorDash.
Yeah, we wind up with food or just, eating trash while we can.
Bonus question. What's your favorite DoorDash meal?
Is it Buddha's?
It's probably Buddha's. There's a nice vegan Chinese place. Yeah, it's fun. Ooh. And they always give you lots, and then we can just order a bunch and have that around. Yeah, it's very good.
Nice. Now I got this this Chicago hot dog place called Portillo's near me, but it's always got the longest drive-through line. So if I ever have a hankering for Portillo's, I DoorDash that one.
Yeah,
it's for me the $5 delivery is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's just the time it saves.
Yeah.
It's better than the way my deadlines used to be when. At least it's real food.
Yeah,
there
peanut
was
butter and dry ramen.
Peanut butter sandwiches. That's basically it. Just peanut butter and jelly. Whatever I can throw together. A spaghetti. Just that twice a day, if that. And I just sit down at my computer or my desk and I just keep going.
Gotta love games for elevating us above the poverty of comics and into the middle class of can order DoorDash when we're on a tight deadline.
Yeah.
Peanut butter and jelly, mostly because I had $12 and I had to make sure that it could last me 2 weeks.
Yeah. Now I'm hungry. Oh gosh, I want ramen. Anyway, all right, cool. So all this hard work, collaboration with composers, sound guy, voice actors. Where are you guys in the pipeline with completing Slay the Princess? I believe right now on Steam it just says releases 2023, or is that still kind of a moving target for you guys?
Oh, we have a release date we've settled on. We'll be announcing it.
Oh, okay.
In the future.
Yes.
We
and it is this year.
Yeah, it is this year. It will be done this year. Work is going swimmingly.
Absolutely.
Are we going to be seeing this on any of the future showcases next week?
We are not doing a Summer Games Fest announcement, but we maybe have an announcement as part of another showcase later this year.
Ooh.
Wow.
I bet you it's Gamescom.
It's not Gamescom.
Well, you can't go around just confirming things.
Yeah, Pat, keep guessing. We'll eventually rule it out. No, we want to be on.
Jeff Keighley's going to be the one that announces it, and he's going to be like, I can't wait to play this game.
Yeah.
For my personal friends at Black Tabby Games.
Nice, excellent. Well, Pat, is there anything else you can think of? Because I don't know. I've gotten a lot of awesome information. I'm very psyched for this game. I myself might have to just tide it over and start playing Scarlet Hollow as well. I don't know, Pat, I just asked you any questions.
Rabbit hole.
This is not even close, really, but I think when you said choices that matter earlier, Abby, it made me think of a game that I purchased from the Nintendo eShop. And I think it's the main title is Choices That Matter or something, and then there's like a subtitle of that particular story. Have you heard of that line of games?
I don't think so.
Yeah, let me quickly. I think it's called Choices That Matter, but not that I'm criticizing Choices That Matter games, them over you, but it's sorry. So the game that I played, it's by Tin Man Games.
Man.
Choices That Matter, and their heroes were lost. That was the one particular title that I played, and there were a couple other versions of Choices That Matter. But in this case, Choices That Matter, and then the sun went out. Choices That Matter, and their souls were eaten.
I see. It's like a collection.
But in this case, I think it's just a text narrative. So take all that's really awesome about Slay the Princess and make it just text, which I know it's just not the same.
It can still be very good.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. Like, I'm not poo-pooing on Tin Man Games, but when I played it, I did like kind of almost like a similar, very, very, when I say wordy, like it's text heavy because you are going on this adventure and your choices do actually matter. I played it through a couple of times and got very drastically different directions. There were some sound effects that did kind of play into the ominous creepiness, especially since with those games, like I couldn't see anything. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Where is it going? So I'm now kind of seeing Slay the Princess as kind of like an evolution off of that type of a game, but with Abby, with your excellent, drawing artistic skills. So
good.
That's my history behind that. There you go. Sorry, I was rambling. Pat, do you have any other questions for our guests?
Sure. So, after Slay the Princess, what's next for you guys?
The rest of Scarlet Hollow.
Yep.
And that'll take us a little while.
Well, we're going to release episode 5 probably next year.
Definitely next year.
Yeah, next year.
It won't be this
definitely
year.
Going to be next year.
It'll be
we're releasing another game this year, so we got some time, and it's going really well though.
Yeah,
it's very complicated already, and it's very interesting.
Every new episode gets bigger,
and then episodes 6 and 7 are going to be released as one.
Okay.
So that's going to take us a while
to
finish.
Year and a half.
Yeah, because episode 7 is going to be quite the endeavor. I cannot wait to tackle that. That's when everything comes back.
Yeah. And I don't have anything to say other than saying a bunch.
I have a bunch of comics to do after that.
We'll do a third game at some point. We'll do a third.
We have to do game 3. Yeah. You need a good round number like 3.
You can't just do 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, anything else that you'd like to say to our Boss Rush audience? We do have a big indie fan base, very story-driven gamers. Any last bits that you want to share?
Thank you for listening.
You should play our games.
Yeah.
Wow, well said, Tony. Couldn't have said it better myself.
If you like our stuff, some fun things that we've liked that you might also like that are indie. Case of the Golden Idol. That was a great time. Beacon Pines. Wonderful time. I was a teenage exocolonist.
Yeah.
Devotion.
Excellent. Abby likes the Mortuary Assistant.
I do.
This is our little list of indie plugs.
Yeah.
Nice. No, we will definitely put your we have your website where you have a demo for Slay the Princess. We'll definitely put that into our Discord and show notes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Yeah, and we've partnered with Crit Rate. I don't know if you got to speak with the guys of Crit Rate at PAX, but they're kind of like a gaming recommendation system.
Yes, I think I talked to them a couple times.
Yeah, I think so. I remember that.
PAX is a blur of tired feet and excitement.
Yeah, no, totally get it. Well, right back at you. Thank you so much for your time. I've learned a lot. about your game. I'm very excited to play it. I'm excited to talk about it. And I hope we be in touch. But until then, good luck with everything. Best of luck on the launch and all that good stuff.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Oh, goodness. And silly me, I'm being a bad host. If you gain any new fans from the Boss Rush community, where can people find you?
You can find us on twitter.com/BlackTabbyGames. I don't know how long Twitter is going to continue to exist, but it's still our main social media.
I was going to say, while it's still there.
It's still there.
We're on Tumblr. Our Discord community is really nice.
Discord's probably the best place to find us.
Yeah, you'll get a lot of announcements there.
In our games, on our Twitter, on our Steam pages. We have subreddits for our games. We're on Blue Sky. No one's on Blue Sky right now.
But we're there.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll get your Discord information as well so people can join.
Yeah, I think that's just discord.gg/BlackTabbyGames. We have one of those little vanity URLs. So cool.
Yay, nice. Well, thank you so much. And Pat, thank you for co-piloting this spotlight with me. It's been an absolute blast. I wouldn't have it any other way.
I appreciate you inviting me. I love talking and getting to know the devs of these video games much better.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
The Boss Rush Podcast is a product of Boss Rush Media, LLC, and is recorded from our headquarters in Akron, Ohio. This show is produced, written, and directed by me, Corey Deering. My co-hosts are Stephanie Klimov, LaRon Dawkins, and Edward Varnell. You can find Stephanie at Klimov_author on Twitter and Instagram, as well as on the EXPcast. You can find LaRon at Exodus803 on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube, and also on Crossroads, the video game podcast. You can find Edward at ThatRetroCode on Twitter and Instagram, as well as hosting Nintendo Power Block. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at IamCoreyInHD, and find me hosting Tower Casuals, the Destiny podcast, and co-hosting Nintendo Power Block. Find the Boss Rush Podcast on all social media platforms at Boss Rush Podcast. You can also follow Boss Rush Media and the Boss Rush Network on all major social media platforms. Join the Boss Rush Network Discord and Facebook groups to interact with other friends and fans. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.